Hello, everybody, to our session about Office 365 Groups, Best Practices. My name is Martina Grom, and I'm presenting together today with Siva from Microsoft PG team. And what we have to do is we have 45 minutes to present everything you saw yesterday in the roadmap session in theory. They had 75 minutes, so we are good to go. We have a lot of demos. And we want to go quick, and the last thing is there's 50 minutes after our session, there's another group session, and if you want to attend that, we will probably have the Q&A after the session at the booth. So what are best practices for Office 365 groups, and why do we do that? It's just because when I work with customers, I see that there is a lot of confusion around Office 365 groups. Should I enable that? Should I disable them? What's the best practice to use them in the market? And how to have a good governance around Office 365 groups, and how to keep groups safe and manage them at scale. And the third option we will talk about today is how can I manage and upgrade my legacy systems, for instance, distribution lists or public folders or any other traditional collaboration tool to Office 365 Group and work with them in practice. So how do we get started with Office 365 Groups?
Good morning, all. Good to see you all, and thanks for taking the time to attend this session. So just want to set up some context here. So Microsoft 365 caters to a very large set of customers, and we have designed it to meet a lot of unique needs for many groups. So what we have done is basically there is Outlook, where you can go and create groups, and you can start communicating with your team in a very familiar place for you to communicate and collaborate. And if you have distribution lists, what you can do is you can go and upgrade these distribution lists to groups, and then you get the added benefits of shared mailbox, you get notes, and also files. And these notes and files are available in SharePoint, which is your central location for content, and you can always access them from there, and you can share it with your team members. You can also share it with anybody else that you want to. And we also have Teams. Teams is the hub for you. If you're a very actively engaging group, then what you do is you use Teams to collaborate with your team. And all these tools that I just talked about basically are available for your communication within your team. And there is also Yammer available for you. And if you want to communicate and collaborate with coworkers across your organization, people who are outside of your division or department, then you would use Yammer. And the unique thing about Microsoft 365 is that it comes, all of these tools are implemented using an intelligent fabric. And this fabric includes a membership service from Office 365 groups. And then there is also discovery and intelligence available through Microsoft Graph. And we also provide security and compliance. And what more do you want? Right? So, and in this session, I'm not going to go deeper into any of these tools because there are multiple sessions that my colleagues and rest of the folks from our team have been giving and are also giving it today and tomorrow as well. So in this session, what we will do is Martina will walk through the tools that she uses in her company and also the best practices that she applies so that you can, when you go back, you can take those best practices and see if you can apply it in your organization. So over to Martina.
So thank you for that, and thank you for the introduction. And also this slide shows very clearly that Office 365 groups connect any other Office 365 service together. So if you make a team, a planner, a SharePoint site, and so on, you can connect everything back to Office 365 groups. And this is also some of the important things. So what are many companies doing, or what are my customers doing if they are going with an organization of managing groups successfully? The Microsoft point of view is that very often you are encouraged to use groups as a self-service. So just keep it going. So let people use groups at their terms and open up groups and so on. And this is also something which I would highly encourage you as an IT pro. Normally, from an IT pro perspective, you say, no, I keep control about what is going on in my Active Directory, in my Azure Active Directory. I need some kind of control about my structure, my naming conventions. I need some restrictions. I want to avoid bad words in my groups and anything else. But if you make it a strong control system around Office 365 group, or one of the most common things I hear with my customers is, the first thing is, how can I turn off groups and don't use it anymore? But this is, if you do turn off groups, you miss the beauty of Planner, you miss the beauty of Teams, you have a lot of other functionalities you can't use anymore. And your users may ask you, why can't I use that? So the best approach is, if you are not able to go self-service for various reasons, you can go into a controlled group mechanism. That means you can restrict group creation, you can put a workflow behind that, and if you do that, you can set up a naming policy, you can set up a group deletion policy, you can also set up a group expiration policy. And then groups are managed in a controlled way. You still have it under control, but you have it under control in an IT pro perspective. You don't have to manage it on a micro-level management system. You just have a very good controlling mechanism behind that, and you can do that from there. So can I bring that to a place where we have that? And our intention in that session was to show how to do that. And we created a simple workflow. We didn't use any third-party tool for doing that. So the workflow which we created uses out-of-the-box tools which are available in Office 365 and in Azure. So our workflow, which I will show you afterwards in the demo, makes the following assumptions. We have group creation restricted to only a subset of users or a subset of administrators in our group. But we want that the user have a self-service workflow in place so they can create groups and get through an approval workflow. So the first option in the workflow is the user opens up the workflow on his mobile device through a Power App, or he can go in a SharePoint list. The data the user gives in his Power App is sent to the SharePoint list, and the SharePoint list triggers a flow, and the flow triggers group creation afterwards. So that means the flow is triggered, and this flow sends an approval workflow to the manager of the person who intended to create the group. So the manager receives an email, and he is able to accept or reject the group creation process. If he rejects this, the group is not created, and the flow breaks at that time. If the manager approves the group creation, an Azure function creates the group in Azure, adds the requester as an owner of the group, and adds the requester also as a member of the group. And then the finalizing step is the flow stops with an email to the requester and sends your group is ready status back to that. And all of that is built in standard features with standard tools in Office 365 and in Azure. So how does that look like in practice? And I need my reading glasses for that. So first of all, we have here our user, it's Alex Wilber, and she wants to create a group. So she can open up a Power App. So consider she is on her mobile device and opens up the Power App. And in the Power App, she is able to create a group and provision the new group system. So on her mobile device, she adds a new group and calls it project, that's star. That's star. We try it again. And then she confirms the group creation process. And you see here, she already did some of that processes in there. And what happens next? Now the flow starts, and the manager of Alex gets an approval email. So we look at his email and check there. Simply hit refresh, and you see the manager gets an approval email. Approval request, do we want to build a new Death Star in the future, and do we need a group to communicate around that? So he can either reject or approve the workflow. So he's approving that, so the approval workflow has now successfully fired. How does it look like from a technical standpoint if we go into the flow and look at that? So this is the flow which lies behind that. And you see here we have the provision group feature where you see these are our flows, and you also see we created a lot of groups to test it, how it works properly. And here you see this is our workflow, which was fired and was set up in flow. And you also see the time, so it's going really quick and very good. So back to our user, which is here, and go to his email. And then you see first the confirmation email from the manager that the Death Star group was approved by your manager. And then you also see here, congrats, your new group project Death Star is already ready and is available there. And when I hit refresh, hopefully my new group will also be there on the left. And no, not yet. But this is how it works from a functionality perspective. So you see it fires really quick. It goes through an approval workflow, and the person here, Alex, is not able to create any groups through Outlook or Outlook Web Access. Normally, it's all going through a control way through that workflow process and works from that perspective. So this is what we can do there. Back to the slide deck. But how is that set up, and how do I manage that? Because we saw in our workflow a lot of requirements how that works. So the first step, and if I step you through the slides, is first we did set up a security group which is allowed to create groups. So this is done via PowerShell, and the pro tip is always do that with a dynamic distribution group. So this is very easy to do with new PowerShell commandlets. And the second step we did there is we create a naming policy. So we also want to avoid that any bad words are created in our groups or that we have the organization in there. A best practice here is if you're a multinational or work abroad and so on, you can include in the naming policy department names, country names, or anything else. Don't be too creative with the names and don't make them too long. Make it either remarkable or very short and descriptive. And then we set up an expiration policy. Why is that important? An expiration policy helps you keep track of your resources within Office 365. So it helps you save storage, it helps you get rid of orphaned groups, it helps you get rid of groups which are no longer used within your company. And you can set up that as well. But what happens if a group is accidentally deleted by someone or it's expired? Then you set up the next policy, which is a soft delete and restore capability. And soft delete and restore means the group was accidentally deleted and you can soft delete it within 30 days after that deletion. And there's also the possibility to hard delete a group if there's any need to do that. And how will you find those groups which might be expired or might be valuable to delete them or anything else, you do that through usage reporting. And usage reporting helps you to find those groups which are no longer used or which are in heavy usage, so that you, from an IT perspective, also don't delete any groups which are currently in heavy use. And we switch back to the demo, and the next steps is we switch through the naming policy and also through the other steps. So switch over to PowerShell. And first step is I'm already connected to my tenant. So also one of the tips is there are a couple of PowerShells available. There is the Azure Active Directory V1 PowerShell, which you can use. There's also a V2, and there is a V2 preview. I'm currently using the V2 preview to get the extended PowerShells in there, and you can just download them from that. For my usage reporting, I also need the SharePoint PowerShells. And for certain circumstances, you can also use Skype for Business Online PowerShells to use in there. And for Exchange Online, we have remote PowerShells. So first is the restriction of the group policy, and just a quick step through that. If I look at my groups and all the groups which are here, you see here I have here my allowed created groups security group, which is a group which is allowed to use groups. And if I go through that, I can simply add this group policy as the security group, which is allowed to create groups in the future. In our application, we don't need that because we use an Azure function which has higher rights than that. But it's a good thing to restrict group creation setting in that manner. So back to the naming policy. What are we doing there? So if we go in a naming policy, we also use our groups and look there how it looks like. So let's check which values do we have in our group. And here you see what is enabled and what isn't enabled in our policy. So you see, you can create a custom block word list. So you can create any block words list which doesn't apply in your company or you don't like in your company or anything else, like HR, CIO, Death Star, MVP, RD, any other things. And you can also set up here the naming requirement. And as you see here, you can set up a certain amount of tools here. For instance, that you see, I can add department, group name, country, and anything else. So this is also something which might be very useful to set it up. So our naming policy just goes into groups. So we want to use that. And if we check that, is it already set? And we look here, you see here, this is our prefix suffix naming policy requirement, and it's already set in the policy. And then we can also set up custom blocked words list. We have here NDA, MVE, MVP, RD, Disney. We can add also Death Star to have that here. And if we do that, you see the setting, the setting is already set here. And look at the values again, and you see we have here now our custom block words list in there. And then you can also set up the standard block words list, which was demoed yesterday in the roadmap session, and set that to true. And if you do that, there is a catalog of bad words we mentioned yesterday in Christoph's session. And if you set that up, the list is hosted by Microsoft. You have it in different languages. So all custom bad words are restricted on that as well. And then if we had set that up, how does it look like from the GUI perspective or from the user? So I switch back to my user, which is here, and she opens up Outlook. And you see Patty, in that case, she has the little plus sign that Alex didn't have for a group creation, and she wants to create a new group. And she creates a group name like sales. Sales. Yeah, this is available. And you see what the naming policy is doing. It adds the GRP naming convention setting to the policy and adds that as a name. So just to enlarge it, you see here, we have it here, and you see how it looks like. And you can also add the bad words, for instance, which are probably not allowed, and then you get also a confirmation that it's not doable. Let's check. It's available. I'm sorry. It worked yesterday. Thanks. So, and you see how that looks like from a group creation perspective with a naming policy. So back to our demo. The next step we are doing is we are doing a group expiration. And how is a group lifecycle policy in there? So my first step is I check, is there any lifecycle policy in place? So I see no policy is here. I don't have set up one. So I don't need to remove it, but I can set up one. So the first step here would be, if I look at that, I set the lifecycle policy. The lifecycle of the policy is 180 days. That means after 180 days, the group deletion process will start. Then I add that policy to all my groups. So I do it for all my groups, but you can also add that group lifecycle policy only for selected groups in your tenant. So it's up to you. For me, it's currently all. And then I set an alternate notification email to that setting. That means if the group is orphaned, it doesn't have an owner or anything else, a second person gets the notification that the group will be expired within 30 days. And you have that here. So just set up the policy and okay. The N is not highlighted. You're correct. Thank you. This is when I do it without reading classes. So it's set up. And you see, if you have that, and we look at the list of the policy again, we see we have now the policy in place with that ID for 180 days. It's managing all groups, and the alternate notification email address is my admin account. And you also see here, I have an ID here, so if I want to change that, for instance, my manager told me, okay, this is very nice, but 180 days is far too long in our tenant, and we need to remove that or update that. We just add the same policy in here, copy the ID, and make it for 30 days. So let's update that. And then you get, manage group types should be all. And then you see, as soon as you have done that, the policy is in place and is in there. And you can also remove the policy afterwards for all of your IDs. So just look at that, and then you see, okay, now we are still at the beginning and can create it from the beginning. So back to that, we have no policy in place, and then we set it up for 30 days for all my users and run the script again. And then you see we have created the policy again. And what we can do with a group expiration and what does it look like from a user perspective is, if we go back to the slide deck, is the expiration policy which is set up, the group owner experience is the following. Within 30 days, he gets a notification which counts on, okay, your group will be deleted within the next 30 days. So you can look at the group, and the owner has the possibility to renew the group or go to the group, check the group out, and also add the group. What happens if the group is deleted or you missed the expiration date or anything else, you get another notification email which says, okay, your Office 365 group was deleted at that date, and after the expiration policy, you have 30 more days to restore the group within that. So next point is go back and restore the group, and the next user experience you get, if you go to that and say restore group, you get a confirmation that your group is already restored and that you have it here again. So you can also look at that. Soft delete and restore might be our next topic in there. So what happens if a group is accidentally deleted and you missed the notification emails, you didn't restore it, or you want to restore it in a controlled way? You can restore the group. Be aware that soft delete, or if you restore a soft delete group and it was a heavy use group with a lot of content, it can take some time till it's restored. So it could take up to 24 hours till the group is fully restored afterwards. For the cases where you need a hard deletion of the group, you can also do that through PowerShell. There could be the case that you have that in your requirement as well. So how does that look like from PowerShell perspective? Just go back. My soft delete is also, first of all, I get all of my Azure Active Directory groups, and I look at that, and here you see, here are our groups we have here. So for instance, we have Dashstar, Project Falcon, or any other else. And we see, okay, we need to delete one of the groups. So let's delete the Yammer group. Copy the ID and get that updated. So we delete the Yammer group. You see, it's going fairly quickly because we didn't have any content in there. And then we check, is our group still there? And you see the Yammer group is deleted. We don't see it anymore in our context. But the Yammer team complains that we accidentally deleted their group. So we go back to our deleted groups, and we fire the following commandlet. And here you see all the groups we created and which are still restorable. So you see a lot of groups in there, and we can simply restore them. So I still have the group ID in my copied, so I can go there and restore the Yammer group for them. So, and what happens now? You see the Yammer group is restored very quick, and if we look at our Active Directory groups again, you see here the Yammer group is now already here and already restored. What happens if you want to hard delete one of the group? You do that with remove Azure Active Directory deleted directory object, and then the group is deleted and cannot be restored from that point of view. So you have that as well. So next step would be, how can I find out, for instance, orphaned groups in my tenant? So one of the things is I use my usage store here, and what I do in that script is I create an CSV export file where I get all my groups, the last created date, and also the SharePoint connection, where I send, okay, these are the last dates when files are uploaded to that tenant. And how does that look like from a perspective, from the result perspective? Here you see we have our security groups and all other Office 365 groups. You see the access type of the group. You also see the SharePoint list of that. And here at the end, you see the last modified date. not only from an Exchange Online perspective, also from a SharePoint Online perspective. And you can look at that and you see for how many days the group is present or no longer used. So this is also a decision framework for you to find groups which are no longer used and which you can safely delete after a certain amount of time and have them here. So this works as well. Next one is, how do I keep groups safe and apply governance to my groups? So one of the main things could be create notifications and alerts within your tenant so you find any unusual groups behavior. So for instance, mass downloads by users, external sharing by users, anything else. And you can do that in the Security and Compliance Center within your Office 365 tenant. And you can just set it up, and then you get an alert, get a notification, and see, okay, we have some kind of unusual group behavior within our tenant, and we can manage that. And this is also something many of my customers are doing. So they do not audit it actively. They set up alerts, and as soon as they get an alert, they look into that and can create any management capabilities in there. And Siva will show you the best practices, how it works within Microsoft, if they set up policy enforcement and also notifications, usage guidelines, and so on. Yeah. Thank you.
So in Microsoft, our IT department has similar needs in terms of security, compliance, and guidelines and policies. So what we do at Microsoft is we have enabled self-service for all our employees. That means everybody who's an employee in the company will be able to create and manage their own groups themselves. And as part of the creation, the IT has enforced certain policies. For example, like the usage guidelines. We have created a set of usage guidelines, so the employee, when they create and manage groups, they understand the nuances in doing so. And this document is actually published, so you can see that in the create dialog when you try to create a group. And also the classification. When a user tries to go and create a group, they need to pick a classification for the group itself. It's a label on the group that identifies the criticality of the data. So we have defined a few classifications like high business impact, medium business impact, and low business impact. So the high business impact means this group has very critical data, and it is available or it can be shared only with named recipients within the organization. So the IT enforces a policy that this particular group, a high business impact group, cannot have a guest member as part of the group, and also the privacy is set to private. The medium business impact groups are basically groups where the data can be shared as needed by the owner. They can make the decision on whether it should be a private or a public group and whether they can add guests. While the low business impact groups are completely public, all the data can be shared with anybody within the organization and external to the organization. And apart from that, we have basically enforced these policies, some of these through custom scripts, but many of these features are already available for you. So you can use some of these best practices in your organization as well.
Yeah. And one of the best practices is we are all used to use different colors.
Color codes, yeah.
So we are used to drive a car. We know how that works, that green is a good color and red might be a not so good color. So if you use the same colors, it's very easy for users to recognize, okay, this might be a site which a high business impact, and I'm not allowed to share things from there. So this is also something my customers do a lot. And also what we can do there is set up private versus public based on classification, and you can just go with a PowerShell script, query all public groups, and based on the classification, set it up as private groups afterwards. Another thing many customers are asking for is, how does it work with guest access, with external persons, and how can I do that? So external guest access, currently we use teamwork a lot. The normal team has always external persons as well in the teamwork. And guest access is something which is quite important. But you can set up guest access with various flavors. So one thing is you can set it up user managed. So every user is allowed to add external guests to your group and work with them. From an IT perspective, you might want to control that. And if you do that, you can set up, for instance, a whitelist. So a whitelisted domain list that you say, okay, Microsoft can only invite users from at work to work with them as external guests, only on that domain perspective. Or you go in an IT managed approach. That means any guest needs to be approved by your IT, which could be a lot of work if you're working in a huge tenant with a lot of users, and so on. So also there is a good approach to make a workflow after that and consider what is allowed or what is not allowed with external users, and use that in your environment. Last part of our presentation is, how do I use groups, and how do I go from traditional collaboration tools or from legacy collaboration tools into Office 365 groups? First is how it looks like with Exchange. Siva?
Yeah, so basically on hybrid, so last year we released the documentation for how to set up your environment in a hybrid mode. You can use AAD Connect and go through the configuration and set up your group right back, so that the cloud groups on the cloud get synced into your on-premise servers as distribution lists. And once you do that, the experience for the users on-premise will be very similar to a distribution list. They will be able to send emails to the group. They will also be able to receive emails sent to the group in their inbox. And please try this out if you have not already done this. And then we also have some tools that will help you upgrade your distribution lists to groups. And we also announced the availability of the scripts that we have that will help you migrate public folders to groups as well. With respect to distribution lists upgrade, you have two options. One is you can go to the Exchange Admin Center, and we have a button in the toolbar now which will help you bulk upgrade, which means that all the available distribution lists that are eligible to be upgraded to groups will show up in there. You can bulk select them and then upgrade them at one shot. You also have PowerShell scripts that are available. You can go download them, and then the links are available in the deck. You can take a look at it later, and then go to those links, download the scripts, and you'll be able to use those scripts to upgrade. And with respect to public folders, we have support for migrating calendar public folders and email calendar and email public folders to groups, and you can try all of that out.
Yeah. And how does it look like? Is in the Exchange Admin Center, you see here, I'm here in the groups, and here you have the possibility to simply upgrade your distribution list to Office 365 groups. This is what some of my customers did already. They just said, okay, we need a better place to work together, and not only a distribution list where we can't catch up, where we don't find any content for new members who added or who joined the distribution list recently. So if you do that upgrade, it's really powerful that you have that kind of functionality in there. I have one last question for you. Do I have Office 365 groups on premises?
No. But you still have the experience of a DL when you set up your hybrid environment. So.
Okay, thank you. So another question we get asked a lot is, how can I connect my existing SharePoint team sites to an Office 365 group? And this also works. that you can connect your classic SharePoint team site to an Office 365 group afterwards. And the beauty of that is after that you get the full functionality within SharePoint and the SharePoint team site with all the new experience, but you also get the Office 365 groups functionalities like Planner, like the mailbox, like the calendar, and stuff like that. So you have that as well. Groups and Yammer, what are best practices to connect that? Currently, if you have Yammer enabled, you don't get any Office 365 groups functionality in there. And some of my customers, as I'm from Europe, we always have the discussion about data residency. So that means I don't like, as a European customer, to have my data hosted in a Microsoft-owned data center in the US. I want my data in Europe in the same tenant like I have. How can I add that? If you add groups and Yammer, best practices is make a proper setup of your Yammer network. That means add any domain which is in your tenant to the Yammer network, that everybody is in there. And then do an identity cleanup of your Yammer identities. Next step is set up Office 365 as the main identity provider. And then the last step is allow only licensed users to access your Yammer network. And then groups creation is enabled. That means if a user creates a new Yammer group, he gets the functionality of an Office 365 group as well, with a SharePoint site, with anything else. And this, the Yammer team is currently working on that for a deeper integration in that, and then you have the full functionality in there as well. Next topic is best practices around Office 365 groups and Microsoft Teams. You can link your existing private group to a Microsoft team anywhere. And people like that because they like the new Microsoft Teams client and have all in one client and use it for there. And as groups are the basis of the Microsoft team, you can simply link that as well. And one recommendation I worked out with some of our customers is the main planner site could be also the main planning site for that whole team in that. And you can add sub-planner team sites in your team as well. What do you need to have that? For some of the functionality, you're good to go with your Office 365 licenses, but for selected things like activities report, soft delete, and so on, you need an Azure Active Directory premium license. The good news around that is most of my customers have already enterprise mobility and security in place, so they already have Azure Active Directory premium services, and it's really nice to have that added as a functionality as well. Takeaways and actions. The workflow I showed is part of a series we post to our blog at blog@work@at, where you find all the PowerShell scripts in my GitHub, the Azure function, and how is that set up, and you can build your own solution and your own think about that. And if you want more about group, just follow the link and go in there. Next sessions in 15 minutes is in the same building, and we know the building is quite small, so it's an easy jump over to the next session. And tomorrow in the morning, there's also a governance and security session around that. Q&A, either now after the session or meet us at the booth at 2 p.m. It's in the south building, just an easy walk over the bridge and down the stairs, and we meet us there. Thank you.
Yeah.